everybody. It's Helen Hillix, intuitive counselor and licensed therapist. And I am your host for the summit, Sacred Sexuality Revealed, Passionate Intimacy, Deeper Connection, and Long-Lasting Desire. And I'm really excited to be back with you again today with a wonderful guest, Lisa Erickson. And I'm going to be telling you a lot about her in a minute. But first, I wanted to say how I came to do this particular topic. And that is twofold. One is that I had my own experience with sexuality in the sexual revolution days of the 60s and 70s. And everybody was coming from a kind of puritanical background, but trying to have a sexual revolution. So we had this inner conflict, and it led me to, while exploring lots of sexual expression, it led me to end up feeling ashamed of myself and kind of not trusting my body, not trusting my own intuition about sexuality. It led to abortion and abuse and dangerous situations. So it took me a really long time to heal that and to discover sacred sexuality at an older age. And I don't want you guys to have to wait so long to discover that. And the second piece of it is that my own professional life, being a licensed therapist for 35 years, I've worked with hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. And so many come with relationship issues and the desire for deep intimacy and sexual blocks and trauma and painful situations that have happened, abortion or whatever it is that blocks them from having sacred sexuality. So I really have a passion for this, not only in an individual couple level, but to change the whole conversation in our culture about sexuality, to bringing it to a deeper level, to a more fulfilling level, and not just the pornography, try the latest toy kind of focus. So that's what I'm here for, and that is connected very much to Lisa Erickson's passion for chakra empowerment for women. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Lisa Erickson is an energy worker specializing in women's energetics and sexual trauma healing, and author of Chakra Empowerment for Women from Llewellyn Publishing. She helps women maximize and balance their energy during key life transits such as pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause, including balancing the mother-child energy line, and much more, I have to say. She also works with women to heal emotional wounds on an energy level from abuse and assault. She's a certified in mindfulness meditation instruction and trauma sensitivity, and has trained in a variety of healing modalities. She's a member of the International Association of Meditation Instructors, the American Holistic Health Association, the Energy Medicine Practitioners Association, and the Breathe Network, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting holistic healing and healers for sexual trauma survivors. Lisa is passionate about helping any woman connect with their energy bodies, and we'll learn more talking today with her about chakra empowerment for women and how that relates to sacred sexuality. So welcome, 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 Lisa. And I had the pleasure of interviewing you for my podcast already, so I feel like we're old friends, and I know how aligned we are. So I'm particularly excited about talking to you today about the topic of sacred sexuality. So thank you.
Yeah, me too, Helen. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm so glad you're doing this summit. And yeah, that we get to continue our conversation and get more into this piece of it.
Right. You know, the whole thing of chakra empowerment for women might not on the surface of it be easy to understand how that relates to sacred sexuality, but I'd like you to talk to start with about how you see sacred sexuality, and then we can dive into the intersection.
Yeah. Well, it is a very meaningful topic for me, and I kind of have levels to which I relate to it. On the one hand, I just relate to it from the perspective of, in this culture, we have denigrated feminine energy, we've denigrated sexual energy. Culturally, it's objectified, sex is objectified, it's two objectified bodies seeking solely physical pleasure. That's how it's presented all too often. And we're in this time in which we're really trying to heal the masculine and the feminine energies within our culture, the damaging conditioning that leads to sexual trauma and assault. And part of that is about totally changing our relationship to sex and totally changing our relationship to our body, to where we really view our body as sacred. So anything we're doing with our body, including sexuality, is sacred. So that's part of this, mass healing. And then on another level, I'm actually a practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, and within that, there are sacred sexual traditions. I don't necessarily, don't claim to be an expert on that, but I've studied sacred sexuality within formal religious traditions, and it exists in quite a few formal spiritual traditions, and there's technical training on it that relates to the energy body. And in fact, a lot of the women's energetic teachings that I came upon when I first started researching the differences between men's and women's energy bodies came from these traditions. They were the most detailed in terms of how the energy body functions. So that's a lot, but those are kind of the two different ways that I relate to this theme of sacred sexuality.
So both from the perspective of traditions that actually teach that, and also from the current pain in our society about the separateness of male and female, and how those separate feelings impact our sexuality and make us think it's just about, bumping and grinding, and how that's beginning to heal and beginning to change.
Yeah, and it opens up all these other issues around intimacy, what's true vulnerability, what is sex as an expression of love. And sex for pleasure, I think, is perfectly fine. This isn't a moral judgment against that. But it's really just about, how do you have sex for pleasure even? How do you even have that? There has to be a real connection with what is pleasurable for the other person. And that requires a connection that is not just objectification. Yeah.
Would you dive into that a little bit more? Because you really said a mouthful there, that, it's not just, it can't be about objectification if you're going to really understand how to find pleasure together.
Yeah.
Even if you think that's all you want is pleasure.
Yeah. Because to find pleasure together, it's a feedback loop. You are giving and receiving in the act of sex. And the giving, you are attuning to the response of your partner in order to discover what they enjoy. Perhaps there's verbal communication, or perhaps it's subtler, but there has to be this true tuning in to that individual in that moment, a real presence, not a in my mind idea, sex, two different bodies coming together and they're both separate in their heads, imagining something that isn't actually happening, not relating to that person that's with them right there. So it's about presence and that whole give and take.
I love that. And can you relate that to your work, particularly with your new book, Chakra Empowerment for Women? Can you relate some of those principles or even exercises? I just loved doing that exercise with you in the podcast interview. So would you make that connection between your specific work and this topic of sacred sexuality?
Yeah. Well, that book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, really works with all the chakras, but I focus a lot on the lower chakras, the first and second chakra that are located in our lower body with our reproductive and sexual organs. And that exercise that we did last time, picturing this beautiful sacral lotus in your pelvis, really linked to all these sexual parts of our body, is really about addressing the yin energy, connected, grounded in the earth. And to experience pleasure in our body, we have to be very present in our body. And I just talked about presence in terms of intimacy, like how you have intimacy, you have to be so present. That a lot of individuals who've experienced trauma or hurt in any way block themselves, and they're blocked in their energy body. Especially trauma can cause you to disassociate from those lower chakras, and then being really present in your body is not something you feel safe to do. You have to have that foundation of feeling safe in your body, to then stay grounded in your body, to be present in it in a sexual encounter.
You know, I'm drawn to asking you to lead us again in that same empowerment exercise, because I feel like people can really get a taste for your work that way. And it's also something they can actually take away. It's a way that they can actually connect to their energy bodies from this interview.
Mm-hmm. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's dive in.
Well, let me give a little background on it first.
Sure.
Yeah, part of what it represents for me is a visual, a visual to counter the traditional visual of the chakra system and how the Kundalini, or the energy of spiritual growth, rises in the body. And the metaphoric image that's often used is of a cobra, a snake, coiled at the base of the spine, the root chakra, and it rises up. And if people have ever seen pictures, a cobra can rise up on a spiral base very tall. And that's the image of the Kundalini rising, that it rises like a snake all the way up from the root. And that is metaphorically, it addresses one path of the Kundalini upward. But in fact, we have a lot of different pathways. What it does, though, is it assumes an anchoring in the root chakra. And in fact, a lot of teachings on women's energy bodies teach us that a woman's energy body is anchored in the second chakra, in the pelvis, in the womb center. Doesn't mean we're defined by our procreative nature, but it's our Shakti is already up one chakra in terms of its default. And what this visual represents, this sacral lotus in the pelvis with a strong anchor and light emanating upwards, is kind of the woman's metaphoric image of our energy body. I do use it with men, though, and men find it quite powerful for connecting to their own second chakra and their feminine energy. So men out there listening, I encourage you to go along with this. But I just wanted to offer that background, which I don't even think I really got to in the other call. So,
well, you did. You said,
oh, good.
You
Okay.
did something about that. The Kundalini, the Cobra energy.
Yeah.
I just want to say something about what you just said about you encourage men to do it also, is that, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is recognizing that we all have quote unquote male and female energies within us that both need to be activated and nurtured. So I just wanted to accentuate what you said, that this is, even though it was originated for women, it is absolutely for men as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I think that's such an important part of the healing going on right now, especially in relation to sacred sexuality, men owning their feminine side. So, okay, well, so settle into your energy body, settle into your physical body, rather. Just take a breath, and I invite everyone to close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that. If you don't, you can just perhaps lower your eyelids to almost closed, so you feel like you're turning inward. And if you like, you can place your hands low on your belly, several inches below your navel, between your hip bones. And with this particular one, I like to invite people to sway a little bit back and forth, because our second chakra is linked to our fluidity and to the element water, actually. And then beneath your hand, inside your body, in your pelvic area, visualize a beautiful upward facing lotus flower made of light. It's so delicate and refined, and the petals spread from hip bone to hip bone and from your spine to the front of your body. And they're luminous, translucent, radiant. At the base of the flower is a strong stalk going down through your tailbone, your root chakra focal point, and into the earth. Just like a water lily floats on top of the water, and the stem goes all the way down into the earth at the base of the pond. And this lotus in your pelvis is radiating, swirling rays of light up throughout the whole rest of your body. It fills your navel and solar plexus area, your heart and chest, your throat, and up into your head. It's all sourced from your pelvis and this beautiful sacral lotus. Thank you.
Thank you. That was, I could have stayed there for a long time.
Me too. I figured we had to get going with the interview, but yes.
But you can stay there. If you want to do this exercise on your own, you can stay there just connecting to that swirling light energy moving upward, right? And the rootedness to the earth. And I love that balance between the rootedness and the upward swirling, because I think that's as another integration of, sacred sexuality of the spirit and the body. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about how your work relates to opening people up? Because that's just what we just experienced, was that feeling of being opened up and connected and relaxed. Can you talk more about the principles of your work connected to that?
So a lot of that particular exercise in terms of strengthening someone's second chakra energy, and as you noted, also root chakra, it's really working with both. And I have other exercises more specifically for the root chakra. Really, the root chakra is about feeling safe in your body, and the sacral chakra is about feeling present in your body, including the ability to experience pleasure. And it's amazing how many of us have difficulty experiencing pleasure in our body, not just sexual, but just experiencing taste and sounds. And so part of opening to sexual energy is first opening to sensual energy, and that's all linked to the second chakra. So it's this combination of working on feeling safe in our bodies, and if we've had any trauma, working to heal that so we really can feel safe, and then feeling present with pleasure and being mindful with pleasure, and that's second chakra. And all of that is the foundation, I think, for healthy sexuality.
I completely agree. And again, that's part of the reason I'm doing this summit, is because I don't believe it's effective to try and overlay anything on top of trauma and pain and disconnection from your body for whatever reason. So I love that, first you have to heal the trauma, and then you can learn to be present to pleasure. Mm-hmm. And I totally understand what you mean. And I don't know if you need to describe that a little bit more for the audience about what that is, to be present to pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's very interesting in relation to trauma in particular. Often in trauma healing, there's discussion about someone's window of tolerance. That if someone has experienced trauma, abuse, assault, it can be trauma of any type, accidents, car accidents, war, etc. What tends to happen is that someone's window of tolerance shrinks, meaning in order to feel safe, there's really just a very small window of experiences and situations and sensations that feel safe. And anything outside of that is outside of their window of comfort, and they are triggered into an alarmed state. And that's the nervous system responds in certain ways. All different things happen in our physical body. When you're in that heightened state of tension, you cannot experience pleasure. It's fight, flight, or freeze, right? You're in this heightened state. You're neurologically, you cannot actually process pleasure in that moment, and any sort of sense experience is actually experienced as stressful, right? So being able to experience pleasure is being able to, again, feel safe enough in your body that you open your window of tolerance up, that experience different sense experiences that may be new, you can open to them as being pleasurable and not stressful. So that's really where the trauma healing becomes so important and a foundation. And someone can't just sort of leap their window of tolerance. It's like a gradual process that it needs to happen. There's a lot of usually patience and time needed, and someone has to give themselves that patience and time. And their partner has to give them that patience and time.
Yeah, you said so much there that I'd like to comment on. One is, I think that's a very powerful way of describing the aftermath of any kind of trauma, loss or abuse or addiction or illness or anything, is that it narrows the window of tolerance. I think that's such a good way of talking about it. And when you were using your hands to say, that it takes time, it takes support. What came to my mind is it's like giving birth. That's what I saw, is you're giving birth to yourself, and there are going to be labor pains, and it takes time to open. Mm-hmm. Your body doesn't just squirt out a baby. Mm-hmm. And your window of tolerance is like that. It's like you're opening a portal to a new world, but it takes time and support. And I think that's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. I think it can bring partners together. I have worked with many sexual trauma survivors who, with a supportive partner, at first they felt like any sexual problems they were having were a liability on their part because of their abuse or assault. But if they were with the right partner, once they opened up, and maybe you've seen this in your work too, it actually became a foundation for a whole new level of intimacy in every way in their relationship, working through that together. More often than not, a loving partner is more than happy to give someone the time and space they need if they know that's what they need, and it's being communicated. It becomes, a source of intimacy, not a block at all, right? And then the person can relax, because so often the feelings are of being a problem create more tension and more stress, which just exacerbates the problem.
Yeah, I think that is an incredibly important point you just made about, if you're with the right partner, that the challenges that come from one partner or the other being traumatized, and let's face it, almost all of us have been traumatized. Almost all of us. And I wonder if sometimes the right partner is healing themselves by supporting you through your healing process. It liberates them also in some way. That was just a thought that came to mind. But I also appreciate that so often one partner or the other feels like they have a problem. Mm-hmm. Rather than seeing it as an opportunity for intimacy, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the truth is, everyone has something that they're carrying or that is obstructing their ability to experience love or intimacy. And so this becomes, you're working through what might seem like one person's problem, but as you said, it really becomes a healing platform for both of them. And if you think of all of us as reflections of this larger conditioning around male and female, we're also breaking through all these patterns of conditioning. Maybe a man who's very stoic and can't express his emotions because that's a conditioning he's experienced his whole life. And a woman who's used to people pleasing and never saying no and never communicating what she really wants, and she has to break through all that conditioning. So we're also reflections of all of that, and as partners work through that, they're also healing that conditioning, you might say, or dissolving that conditioning.
Yes, I love that, because that is so prevalent. Again, we all were raised in a society where the male is this way and the female is that way, and never the twain shall meet, so to speak. And as you said earlier, we're finally beginning to heal that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a powerful part of your work and of that, the whole movement towards sacred sexuality is that coming together of the male and female.
Mm-hmm.
No,
yeah, and that's regardless of people's biological sex, right? Like I've worked with a lot of same-sex couples, and it's really the man. I've said at that time as if it was man and female, but it's really just two different partners with two different emotional conditioning, and so it can reflect in a lot of different ways. It's really about healing that masculine and feminine within each of us, so we're all allowed to own all of it. We don't have to kind of only manifest one side or the other of the energies.
And what you're talking about makes me think about the ability to shift out of thinking that there's anything wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's one of the things that I see over and over again with my audience is, saying, I have this problem, my husband has this problem, we have this problem, rather than saying, we've noticed this and we would like to shift it into this.
Right.
And bringing that judgment and that opinion and the shame about it does nothing but block the possibility of having sacred sexuality. So
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I feel like you're saying is, think of it as a blessing. Think of it as a gift.
Mm-hmm. Think of it as your pathway into deeper intimacy. Yeah, and shame is such a big issue, especially with any sexual abuse or assault survivors. There's often such feelings of shame and secrecy around it, such a sense of I'm the problem one because of this past experience. And that shame can be held anywhere in the energy body, but most often it does impact the root and sacral chakra. That I almost can see it in the second chakra when someone is holding shame. It's like this ball of black energy down in the second chakra that has to be released. That's often the kind of work that I do is visuals around that to let someone release it.
I'd like you to talk about that, Lisa, because that reminds me of what you were saying in our other interview, that sometimes the intellectual, emotional, or even physical kind of healing work doesn't allow people to make the shift. And can you talk about what the difference is between that and the energy body work?
Yeah. Well, I really view the energy body as an intersection between the physical body, the mind and the spirit, or the psyche and the spirit. So we have all these different modalities that work at different levels. So talk therapy primarily works at the psychological mind level. We have spiritual religions and spiritual healing that work at, say, the spirit level. And then we have all these physical healing modalities. And energy work just comes in at this intersection point, and it can kind of go either direction. You can be working on, say, a physical shame, and it might be that someone is experiencing physical symptoms and they're getting medical help. And I never advise bypassing medical help. I'm a big believer in energy work being a complementary, not a replacement modality, but perhaps it's not healing, even though they're receiving all the physical healing modalities available to them. Or they're working at the psychological level and they feel they understand why they have the patterns they have, but it keeps re-triggering and they need more help on what do I do in the moment. And that's where both of those situations is where I feel working at the energy body can be really helpful. It's where the imprints live from my perspective. It's where the imprints of a particular pattern live, and you can reprogram how that imprint. You can dissolve that imprint, you can visualize it and help to dissolve it, and you can also rewrite past experiences, which is something that I do quite a bit. Rewrite a situation in which it was triggered, feel what you felt in your physical body and your energy body, and let's rewrite it to feel differently. And you do that in the past over and over until you start feeling able to do it in the moment. When a particular pattern is triggering, you start catching yourself in the moment. And it does take time and patience to rewrite a long-standing pattern. So that's kind of one of the main ways I work.
I love that. It's interesting because as an intuitive counselor, I do a lot of work around rewriting the imprint also, but in a different way, in kind of a meditative state, which I totally appreciate that there are so many of us and so many modalities, because somebody might have tried my work and it didn't work for them, or your work and didn't work for them. It's like there are so many options nowadays. My last interview was with a woman named Charu Morgan from Embody Tantra, and she was saying, whatever you do, just begin.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
yeah, and often you're led from one thing to another as you need it. Exactly.
And so I'm happy to hear about exactly what you're doing, because it is different than a lot of things that people are normally exposed to when they think about healing modalities.
Yeah, exactly. And some people, I think we do have propensities for one or the other. So some people just really do experience the world energetically. And if you say, so describe this situation in which you got triggered into anxiety and where you feel that anxiety in your body or your energy body, they'll describe it right away. Other people, it's harder to connect in that way. That doesn't mean they can't do energy work, but I might use other approaches with them. So it really depends on the person. It's same with the chakras. Some people feel them very physically, really energy. Other people, it's more visual. They see it visually. So it's very individual how someone relates.
Can you talk a little bit for people who are not familiar with chakras, period? Can you talk a little bit about what they are and why they're so important? And you're already talking of kind of how you use them, but can we back up a minute and throw that info in too?
Sure, yeah. So the chakras are our main energy centers in our energy body. And the mapping that I use, which is the most commonly found in the West, is a 7-chakra mapping in your body from the spine all the way up to the crown of your head. And there's slight variations in men and women's lower chakras, but in general, like a root chakra at the tailbone, a second chakra in the pelvis, a third chakra in the navel or solar plexus, a fourth in the heart, fifth in the throat, sixth is the third eye, and the seventh is the crown. In fact, in chakra systems around the world, some only work with maybe 4 of those or 5 of those or 6 of those. There's also out-of-body chakra systems. And then there are secondary chakras, which are other more minor energy centers throughout our whole body. It's a whole mapping. And then there's the channels between them. So all of that sort of combines to be our energy anatomy. But these 7 main chakras are something anyone can work with meditatively by focusing on them in their body. And you can do different things with that energy. You can seek to magnify it. You can seek to clear it. You can seek to activate its properties, which is a lot of what the tools in my book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, is designed around, like how do you activate what you need in the moment. You can work with them for healing. You can work with balancing between them. And then in terms of sacred sexuality, some of the more esoteric teachings are how we join at the chakric level with someone else's energy body through sexuality.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I didn't know if you want, I spoke a lot, so I didn't know if you wanted to branch off. Yeah, so there's different types of sacred sexuality. There is the heart connection, where it's really about 2 hearts feeling as one. There's also spiritual experience or bliss experienced through the moment of orgasm is said to release a lot of kundalini, which is the spiritual growth energy that through spiritual practices we actually try to bring up in meditation. In sexuality, that release of kundalini, you can actually use in that moment to get like this burst all the way up into the crown chakra into a metaphysical experience with your partner. And then the woman's second chakra, and this is what's so fascinating, these teachings, a woman's second chakra, by virtue of its connection to procreation, is considered a doorway into primordial creation. It's like the center of a mandala, and both partners with their awareness through sexual union can go through a woman's second chakra, or in the case of 2 women, one of the women's second chakra, into this primordial creation, like the womb of the universe. So that's I've named 3 already, 3 different sacred sexual paths that on the one hand are technical in terms of at the energy body level, where you're focusing or what you're doing. And on another level, they're kind of the same because they're really about a very profound level of connection with your partner beyond the body. Or I would say in addition to the body.
In addition to the body.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It never ceases to amaze me, Lisa, how different people talk about sacred sexuality and all the different descriptions, of going through portals into other dimensions and I love that one of bringing up the Kundalini energy from the genital orgasm all the way up through the crown and into the oneness. Mm-hmm. It gives me goosebumps, to talk about that. And there's so much beyond the pieces and parts mentality of sexuality, and there's so much beyond the genital, someone said fantasy and friction definition of sexuality. And, I believe, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but I do believe that everyone is actually looking for that experience, even though they don't know it.
Yeah. In a way, everything that we do is about trying to feel whole. And sexuality is another place that we try to feel whole. And these experiences are experiences of wholeness, of spiritual wholeness. We feel so separate all the time from everyone around us. And we really are seeking in sex to feel whole with someone. So this is really taking that to a whole nother level in a way.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think of it. It is, instead of saying whole, I would say that we all kind of essentially know that we come from the oneness, and that we are a little bitty chunk of the oneness. And so we're all seeking that experience of oneness, even when we don't realize it. It's exactly what you're saying, except with just a little bit of a different kind of perspective about the name, but it's really the same experience even.
Yeah, it is. No, and I love the way you put that as well. Exactly.
And so I believe even people who are masturbating to pornography, they really are looking for an experience of oneness, but our culture has genitalized that search so much that it's not possible to reach it from that pathway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's really, that's almost a form of disassociation. That's what's so interesting. It's like it's this physical act, and yet it's very much more mental, because you're not actually present. You're in the physical body, but you're not mentally, you're not present with someone or even your own body. Right. So it's almost a form of disassociation in the mind.
Yeah.
Escapism, which is a big way that we self-medicate in this culture.
Talk about that a little bit, because that really intrigues me. The concept of how is escapism healed by working on the energy body?
Well, I view escapism as a form of disassociation, and it doesn't necessarily mean we're just trying to escape from trauma. We really are trying to escape from the demands of our life, from anxiety, from anything that feels uncomfortable for us. We're very overstimulated. So to a large extent, we're trying to escape from that sense of overstimulation. And perhaps what we're trying to get to is that feeling of oneness, right? Whether we're going towards something or we're trying to get away from something, there's this issue. The way we relate to it, whether it's TV, video, or sexuality, porn, whatever, it can be a form of presence, or it can be a form of escapism. So I really view it as the energy body can be this bridge to help someone connect more with being present in this body, with whatever's arising, comfortable or uncomfortable. Anxiety's arising in your body. You don't have to escape it through some other means. You can be present with how it feels to feel anxious, and then you can get to the heart of the matter as to what's making you feel anxious. How can you deal with that sense of anxiety? How can you relax yourself into it? How can you change the underlying circumstances or whatever it is that needs to be done. But you can't address it unless you're being with it, as opposed to just going straight into an escapist. And the energy body, and especially all this lower chakra work, is really about helping someone learn to stay present in their body.
That is so powerful. I have tended to turn to food in my life, and earlier it would be sex in my earlier years. And it's so powerful to learn those skills of staying in your body while you have those uncomfortable feelings. And everybody knows what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you're psychologically, sophisticated or not. I know everybody gets that. Mm-hmm. How we want to escape that feeling in our bodies, whether it's stress or anxiety or fear or fatigue, whatever it is. We have been raised in a culture of escapism.
Mm-hmm. And even more so now, I would say today, with so much media, right?
Yes. And we are totally plugged in from morning until night. Mm-hmm. We are plugged in, and, to disengage from that for even just a moment. I mean, my watch has this little reminder to breathe, mm-hmm. For 1 minute. Just for 1 minute. It's so, every time I say that, it just blows my mind. And yet we often don't make time to stop and breathe. And that connects you to your body.
Right.
Your energy body. If you breathe for 1 minute, it shifts everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the breath is really this bridge. And from an energy body perspective, it first engages your heart chakra, because the heart chakra is linked to the lungs and heart, literally on the energy medicine level. So when you breathe, when you breathe with consciousness, you first activate your heart chakra. And that is the center of the 7 chakra system. It is the center point. From there, it spreads up and it spreads down, and you're brought into centering. The heart's also the link to your psychological self, the party that relates to others. The back of the heart chakra is your spiritual support. So it's just this hub right there in the middle, and just that simple act of breathing with presence will connect you there and show you. You'll know instantly, oh gosh, I'm so tense, right? As soon as you breathe for a minute, or, oh, I'm so trapped in my head, or, oh gosh, I was just eating totally mindlessly. I just ate a whole bag of Cheetos because I was stressed. You immediately see it when you take that minute out and center in your heart.
I love that. And I've never heard that explained exactly that way, that it connects you to the mental process, it connects you to the spiritual. It's the hub, it's the center of the chakras. I mean, and it all is activated by the breath, because that's what it's connected to.
Mm-hmm. And that's life. Our life officially begins with our first breath and ends with our last breath. I mean, breath is the foundational rhythm of our life.
And I got triggered into another thought of how powerful it is to sync your breath with your partner.
Yes.
That can be a beautiful, delicious way to kind of flow into a sacred sexuality experience, or during the experience, is to sync your breath. It's such a reminder of, as you were saying, the wholeness or the oneness.
Mm-hmm. It's a way of syncing your vibrations and connecting your heart chakras from that kind of energy technical perspective.
Right. It syncs your heart chakras when you sync your breath. I love that. And then, of course, because your heart chakras are syncing, it flows down to your lower chakras too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. I have goosebumps again. That's so powerful. So, I feel like we're kind of coming to a natural transition to the end of our interview. And I want to say, is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with that just intuitively comes to your mind that you want to have them think about? Or
Yeah. Well, I think within the context of what you're really doing with this whole summit, to really think about sacred sexuality, sexuality in general, as the connection of two energy bodies. That there really is this chakra connection, chakras connecting in addition to bodies, spirits connecting. And if you, and you can connect on all three levels: physical, spiritual, energetic. And if you open yourself to that, and I think the foundation for that is really first viewing the body as sacred, as your vehicle for having a spiritual experience in this lifetime, and feeling safe and present in your body. Those are the first two steps to moving into this new relationship.
And, I think it's worth saying, or just complimenting what you're saying by saying, no matter what your body looks like, or whether it's old or young or fat or thin or physically challenged in some way, it's still absolutely sacred.
Absolutely. And, we talked last time in our other interview about perimenopause and menopause a little bit, and the different ways a woman's energy body changes, physical body changes. But we always have this kundalini and this sexual energy flowing through us. You have a hysterectomy, you still have a second chakra. The energy body level, it's always still there, and you can always connect with someone else sexually through that energy body. It has nothing to do in a way with your physical body. Well, it does, but it's still always present on that level. You're always whole.
And you can activate that. I think that's something that's really, I want to plug your book, Chakra Empowerment for Women, because you can empower yourself by activating these energy centers in your being. And it, no matter what you think of chakras, some people are going to say, what is that? And it doesn't matter. It's like suspend your disbelief and just practice it and see what happens. What have you got to lose?
Yeah. Even something as simple as that sacral lotus exercise that we did. A lot of women, for example, who had felt their sexual energy was declining, or they weren't feeling sexual, felt like that tool helped them reawaken that. Just visualizing this beautiful flower in this part of their body. You could say, oh, that was symbolic, it wasn't energetic. Well, whatever level it worked on, it worked. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So you just try it and you see what happens, basically.
Yeah. I mean, we are so stuck in our heads that we don't think about, just do it, just try it, just practice it and see what happens. And again, that's sort of like being in that childlike place of curiosity and wonderment. And that so much is part of the magic of sacred sexuality too. So tell us about your free gift. And then I want you to tell us about the book, where they can get the book, and what's in the book and how they can connect to you.
Yeah. Well, my free gift is a couple of videos that I've designed just for this summit that is on the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and chakra teachings related specifically to that.
I'm so honored that you made those just for this summit. That totally touches me, Lisa. You're amazing.
Yeah. Well, this is the kind of stuff I could talk nonstop on. So these are two 15-minute videos. One's the divine masculine, one's the divine feminine, and they're both for both men and women. So if you click through on the gift page, you will find those.
I love that. And I think I want to encourage people to watch both of them, because it's so powerful what we can learn about the other sex. Again, whatever sex, you may be a same-sex couple, but watch both of them, because we all have both energies in us.
Exactly. And that's, as we've talked about, part of what's the rebalancing and healing that's going on right now in the world is all of us healing that within both of us, in ourselves, both of those within ourselves, and then how that reflects in the culture and the larger healing that needs to take place.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell us about the book, where we can get it, and a little bit about the pictures. And I know there's more to say.
You know what? This time I have one with me. I didn't have it. Chakra Empowerment for Women.
Hold it up to the camera so people can see.
Yeah, chakra empowerment for women. And yes, and you can find it all the different places online, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, the publisher Llewellyn, and in various bookstores, or have your independent bookstore order it. But it does include color pictures of the various empowerments. So for example, you can see, this is, I don't know if you can see it, that is the sacral lotus that we just did, the lotus in the pelvis and the roots and the light radiating upwards. So
Cool.
it has color, yeah. And then it has 12 different techniques. So hopefully,
okay.
And it does talk about different women's life transits, pregnancy, postpartum, all of that, menopause, all of those things.
Wonderful. And again, I want to encourage men to read those also, because men live with women if they're lucky.
Exactly. I know some people have said, now you need to do chakra empowerment for men. So we'll see. I think it would be chakra softening for men, maybe, instead of empowerment. We'll see if I ever do it.
I like that. When I said men live with women if they're lucky, I just meant, men who are partnered with whomever. People who are partnered are happier, I think.
Yeah.
And so if you are lucky enough to be partnered, learn about each other.
Yeah.
And so what's the website, the Facebook, Instagram handles?
Yes. Chakra Empowerment for Women is the book website, and Instagram, Facebook are both Chakra Empowerment. Twitter is Mommy Mystic, which is also the name of my blog, my longstanding blog, although my kids are teenagers and don't call me mommy anymore. And then my client website's Enlightened Energetics, but they all link to each other. So just find Chakra Empowerment for Women and you'll find everything else.
Okay, great. And those links, of course, will be in the information below the interview. So, Lisa, thank you again. You are such a powerhouse of information and connections. I love the way your mind works, connecting all these pieces and how it just, they branch off of one another and come back to that whole of the energy body and how it works. So thank you so much for taking another hour out of your time to be interviewed by me again and to present yourself and all your wisdom and your warmth and your insights to this audience. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Helen. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this summit and for doing it in the first place. Such a powerful, needed subject.
Thank you.